You guys ready?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, January 13th, 2025. I'd ask that everyone present please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Batkins?
Here.
Mr. Brado?
Here.
Mrs. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Olgiati?
Here.
Mr. Tominello?
Here.
Mr. Witt? Here. Mr. Burkess?
Here. All right, thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of December 16th, 2024, approval of the bills in the amount of $1,410,298.70, and approval for hose and ladder annual testing. Be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Badkins with support by Mr. Olgiati. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next is our approval of the regular agenda. Board members, I'm not aware of any changes. If there are none, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
All right. Is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Brado. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next is announcements. Have a few announcements. Our Metro Park passes are available in the Treasurer's office. $35 for residents, $24 for seniors, 62 and older. You can visit the Treasurer's office for more information. All of our 2025 meetings and important calendar dates have been added to the Township website calendar. If you're unsure of a meeting date or if the Township offices are open, whether they're open during a certain holiday, you can refer to the calendar on the homepage of our website. Our Senior Center continues to offer many fun and exciting programs for our Township seniors. You can check out the monthly calendar posted on the Township website under the Residents tab or contact the Senior Center 586-466-1497 for more details. And as always, for more information on these as well as all other Township events, you can call the Supervisor's Office 586-466-1445, visit our website, harrisontownshipmi.gov, or follow us on Twitter, X, at harrisontwpmi. Any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll move forward on our agenda with item D1. Mr. Witt?
Yes, as the board may be aware, the township's been working with the residents of the Archer and Lakeshore Canal on a special assessment district, or SAD, to fund the sediment removal from that waterway. Originally, the homeowners had identified a preferred contractor that the township had worked with on several projects previously, but as we waited for permitting from the state, the contractor had stated he may not be able to do the work due to issues with insurance and staffing. The homeowners spent a lot of time and effort to see if there was anyone else. At one point in time, we thought they were just going to have to walk away from the project completely, but they were able to identify another system that they may be able to use. So there's an individual that's interested in doing the work with that new system, and the previous contractor has said he may be interested in doing the work if he can solve, he had some issues with insurance and staffing issues. So if we can figure those out, we got some correspondence today where he maybe said no again, but he's been in and out a little bit, and so we want to, given that we have the potential of multiple companies interested in the work, I'm requesting the board approve to authorize us to work with Wade Trim to prepare a request for proposal for the project and allow any interested parties to bid on the work. Any costs associated with the RFP would be covered by the SAD. And then once those proposals have been reviewed, a recommendation will be brought back to the board for approval for the project.
I'll make that motion.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support?
The support.
Support by Mr. Olgiati. Discussion?
Just one question on that. How much say do the homeowners that are having the project done, how much do they have say in regards to the contractor that they gets chosen? Any or none or?
The answer technically is
Yes.
none.
Okay.
But, you know, we're trying to work with them, and when they came to us, they had a contractor, they had identified this is who we want to do it, and if we all agreed, then that is sort of what we've done in the past.
Okay.
But given that we have some unclearness about like who best is to do the work, we thought it was best to do this request for proposal process.
Main reason I'm asking is just because we have a lot more roads than we have canals that get done in the community, so I just was kind of curious exactly what the procedure was.
Well, and it's easier when it's a road too, because we get to kick it off to the county, and the county does their own process,
Right.
so we don't have to handle any of the actual construction. You know,
The bidding.
and the bidding, any of that, yeah. I mean, we have done it on some private roads, that kind of stuff, but, you know, again, this is sort of unique. We haven't done a dredging project since 2005, I think,
Right.
so.
Good. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other discussion or questions? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we've got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Olgiati. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next on the agenda is the Planning Commission Annual Report. I know this came to me, but I'm wondering if, Mr. Tominello, if you might want to speak to this. I don't know if we need to go through it. I think, you know, it kind of reads itself. I don't know if there's any comments
Yeah.
anyone has, questions. Otherwise, I think the appropriate action would be to receive and file.
Right, just to let everyone know, this is just a summary of the cases that were heard in 2024. So this is a requirement, and it's probably something we haven't really seen in this detail before. Our new planning administrator put this together, so I would make a motion to receive and file if that's appropriate.
Okay? Is there support?
Support.
Okay, motion to receive and file. Any discussion or questions, board members?
I think we all appreciate the work that the planning commission does, and I think this report is like a new standard, and I think it's good to keep that communication going.
Absolutely. All right, seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next is the item F1 from the clerk's office.
Yes, thank you. So as the board may be aware, unfortunately, Eastside Little League ended up closing up last year, so it was consolidated with Clinton Valley Little League. Eastside had historically used the diamonds both at Tucker and Trombley Parks for the games at no cost to the Little League. They did cover the cost of any substantial improvements that they wanted to do, electricity at the park, that kind of stuff, for the vending machine, the
Pitching.
concession stand and the pitching machine. We're okay. All right? All right.
Flashbacks there.
Never mind, I'm sorry. And so in communications with CVLL, they're requesting the same arrangement. We had never had a physical written agreement because Eastside Little League and its predecessor, Lance Cruz Little League, had been around for 60 years. And it was just one of those handshake agreements. Like, of course, Little League, it's for them. But, wanting to make sure that they feel secure in where they're playing baseball and helping to guarantee that they're using fields in Harrison Township for Harrison Township kids. We wanted to try and propose making those available. So I'm just asking the board approval to allow me to create an agreement for the continued Little League usage of our fields and authorize execution with CVLL. Any agreement would be passed by the attorney prior to execution. We have a couple frameworks from other communities that we'll use. And then I'll just make sure Mr. Huth gives a once-over to make sure there's not some liability thing we're missing.
I got a question. Do we need a duration in that? Or only, if something happens down the road, do we need to, I guess, can the agreement be?
We probably have something where on 60 days' notice, we can sever
cancel
the
it or-
agreement.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll
Were
make,
you not plugged in? Oh, it's just decorative, huh? It's right over there. Sorry. Yeah, so we can work through that with Mr.
then I'll make the motion.
Got a motion by Mr. Badkins,
Support.
support by Mrs. Brown. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Board members, I got to pause here. I don't have,
It's in there. You want me to get it?
I don't see, oh, in the floor?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Cool.
No, should be not.
Watch out, some of the places.
We did it.
Is it hot?
Switch on the.
Yeah. No electricity.
Yeah.
How long is that cord? We have an extension cord over here.
We're good here.
You have good there?
Yeah, we're not on the wall.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just realized that. All right, we got juice. Otherwise, I'm gonna lose my laptop. I just looked down, you're like, it's not charging. Sorry about that, guys. All right. Okay, next on the agenda, item G1 regarding Planning Commission reappointments. Board members Carol Murray and Danielle Devlin currently serve as PC members. They are both valued members of the Planning Commission. Their terms on the Planning Commission are up for renewal. I recommend that we appoint Carol Murray and Danielle Devlin to the Planning Commission for terms to expire November 15th, 2027.
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mr. Brado. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next, item G2 regarding some legal fees. Board members, a core function of assessing is to handle property tax appeals. If an appeal is denied at the Board of Review, it can be appealed at the state level. In 2023, several cannabis growers appealed their property classification as commercial. I asked the board to approve using Hallahan and Associates to represent us in these appeals. And this request was supported by our township attorney. We have utilized Hallahan and Associates to assist with property tax appeals as long as I've been on the board. The board approved an hourly rate of $195 per hour with a projected budget of $5,000 at our July 24th, 2023 meeting for these services. The appeals ran throughout 2023 as well as 2024. The state's decision was appealed to circuit court. So the state supported our position. Circuit court overturned the state's position. That was the appellate body to the state tax commission. And so then we took that appeal to the Michigan Court of Appeals. There was a misunderstanding regarding what was approved at the July 24th, 2023 board meeting. As the cases progressed, additional invoices came in and were approved. I recently learned that the amount paid for this representation far exceeded the $5,000 initial budget. We reviewed and revised the internal approval process to prevent this from happening in the future. Because we don't regularly use outside counsel, we don't regularly have invoices that go to the assessing department. When we outsourced the assessing department, we had an assessor that was an employee. We now contract for that position, and she does a great job. But we kind of looked at the fact that it doesn't seem right that we would have a vendor or a supplier approving invoices that we're paying. But she understood it to be that we'd approved the hourly rate of $195 per hour, so she had continued. The total cost to date for our representation in these appeals over the last 18 months is $48,894.82. A portion of these costs have been shared. Initially, there were 2 other municipalities that we shared the costs with. At this point, there are a total of 4 municipalities, 4 other, so there's 5 of us. So we're splitting the cost 5 ways for some of this some of these appeals. As a reference, the classification change, in essence, they're asking to go from a commercial classification to an agricultural classification. That classification change could result in a loss of taxes collected on personal property. 1 year of tax revenue on the personal property at stake is over $105,000. And that's just for our police and fire millage. That doesn't include the library millage for various other taxing entities. Based on these figures, I believe and I'm confident that it is financially prudent to pursue these cases. We do have a legal responsibility, but, basically, if we were fighting over $3,000 worth of tax revenue and we were spending $100,000, it would seem kind of silly to pursue an appeal. And I did review these invoices with the attorney, detailed invoices. Hallahan and Associates has invoiced for their work in November and December of 2024, and I have the invoice that shows that. The case is nearing its end. There were only 10 hours invoiced for the entire month of December. And I believe at the Court of Appeals level, you submit briefs. So once briefs are submitted, it could limit the expenses to follow. Obviously, if we chose to appeal at a higher level, that's to be determined, but at this point, so I'm asking the board to ratify the payment of $48,894.82 to Hallahan and Associates for representation in multiple tax appeals, and approve the $5,167.50 invoice to Hallahan and Associates for the current invoice, and authorize up to $10,000 in additional expenses for continued representation in these appeals. So the $48,000 has already been paid. It's spread out over a year and a half. It's not all associated with this classification. Several of the property owners also appealed their actual assessed values. And some of that has been heard, but currently they're kind of held in abeyance because the state tax commission is sort of looking at this like, well, if we don't even know what the classification is, why are we going to worry about appealing? But once you begin that appeal, if they've appealed in 2023, then they appealed again in 2024. So, we've had representation for those. So that's step one in this process. We have an outstanding invoice. It was really when this invoice came across my desk for the first time that I realized and kind of unwound this puzzle to see how this happened and what we need to do to fix it. So we do need to approve that. I'm just trying to put out a budget. I feel like at this point we're waiting for a decision. If the board is uncomfortable with the $10,000, I'd understand that. I think we're going to see, potentially some invoicing. The real difference would be whether or not this is appealed, whether the decision does, regardless of who doesn't like the decision, could it be appealed to the state Supreme Court? And I'm going to look to our attorney on that. Like, that's a maybe. We don't really know, I suppose.
And I have to get used to this, Mike. Do I need to do something?
You're on.
I'm on, okay. The next level, there'd be discretion with the court as to whether or not they'd even hear an appeal. All the other things Mr. Verkes talked about, there was no discretion. It was going to move to the next level. So regardless of which party's unhappy, the chances are way more likely than that the Supreme Court would never hear it. So this is probably the end of the line here, with whatever the decision is at the Court of Appeals.
And so I feel like, at this point, we're, $54,000 into this pursuit over a year and a half. How the board might, I feel like it's reasonable to ask the board to continue to utilize Hallahan and Associates. What that budgetary figure is, I don't know. Based on what I know, I don't think it's anywhere near $10,000. But the point is that I don't think we want to be in a scenario where we say, sorry, you need to stop representation because the board has to approve this invoice before we proceed. Even if on top of the 54, there's another 10 grand, which I think is unlikely, that's still less than 2/3 of 1 year's worth of revenue. So and this is a specialized representation. So Hallahan and Associates is definitely well qualified. Questions or a motion?
Well, so the 48,000 or the 54,000, you said that there's other municipalities that are involved. So are they part of that 48 or 54,000?
So what I would say is what we've paid is like within some of the invoices, it'll say that this is 1/3 of the invoiced amount. So okay, we did representation, 1/3 of your share is this amount.
No,
So this
they've
is
spent
all-
$150,000.
Okay, so
Right.
this is all ours.
And so right, but the reality is it isn't 150, right?
No,
But-
I know, I'm
right?
just-
Yeah.
But
It's,
my point is, this is all our responsibility.
This is our-
We're not
yeah.
splitting this off. to-
Correct,
Okay,
right.
Okay.
So this is, I mean, I had the accounting department go through, they tabulated, checked out to make sure, you know, everything balanced. There was a point where an invoice wasn't paid or missed, and then it was billed again. I just said I want to make sure that we're square. I mean, it's, you know, very detailed. If I look at February of 2024, there was a split billing for our circuit court appeal. That was shared 5 different ways. Then there's about an hour and a half of just general representation. And then 1, 2, 3 different properties where there's specifically representation for those particular property appeals. So clearly, if there's a property in Harrison Township, we bear that cost.
Sure.
Right? But the amount before us is what our share has been, in some cases 100%, because it may be that they're appealing their valuation. In some cases, it might be 1/3 or as little as 1/5, depending on how many other municipalities. Because this idea of saying what should a cannabis grower be classified as is truly something that's statewide. Frankly, I feel like the state should make this decision, make a determination, and tell us. We shouldn't be spending 50 grand playing it out in the courts, but that's what the state has decided to do.
That's what my question is, are there other cannabis companies who have actually gotten this, where they've gotten switched from commercial to agricultural?
So I can't, the short answer is I can't say that. So let me, to answer that, what I would say is this. It is conceivable that there's a municipality somewhere in the state of Michigan that said, fine, we're not going to fight it, right? And that's the reason why, again, for me, it's frustration. Like, I feel like the state should decide this, but the state is saying, well, let it play out in the court system, which is putting that burden and that cost on us. And I don't know, Mr. Booth, you might be able to weigh in on that. Maybe maybe that, no matter who makes a decision, it's going to be appealed in court. It's just a question of who's going to pay for the fight and the representation. So.
Yeah, I mean, the next step, if it would happen, would be legislature to clear it up, but based on the performance at the end of December, in terms of another municipality I represent, getting them to solve problems, at least with the last group, really wasn't coming to the forefront. They didn't have enough people show up, but at any rate, that would be the next step if all this is just left in limbo.
And I think, on one hand, when we talk about an agricultural designation, if we're talking about someone who has 1,000 acres of land, right? You know, from a services standpoint, what services does a municipality need to provide to 1,000 acres of, you know, corn that's planted, or wheat, or some other kind of a crop, versus a business that has, you know, uses, I mean, super amperage, you know, police protection, obviously they've got their own security, you know, these facilities, on one hand, you could say, well, if they're growing something, isn't it agricultural? But it's hard to say that a large commercial building that's full of millions of dollars of equipment, and, you know, various gases and, you know, special things that we need to know about in case there was a fire, it's just not the same as an open field. So this has a little bit less to do with what the name is or what the activity is versus an operation that's truly something that's demanding of the services that the municipality provides. So, you know, a couple of these business owners that approached me before they went forward with this, and they said, hey, you know, we feel bad, but we think it's in our best interest to fight this. And I said, well, you've got a right. I wouldn't sit here and tell you that you shouldn't. And they said, well, can we compromise? And I went back to our assessor, and the short answer I got was no. This is one of those things like you can barter on how much. Let's just say we went to a property and we said, well, your assessed value is $1 million. And they said, well, we think it's $500,000 and we're going to fight it. If you came back and said, well, would you agree to $800,000? That's an area where sometimes there's some bartering, because sometimes it's hard to nail something down. If you're talking about a 3-bedroom, 2-bath brick ranch, there's lots of comparables. But if you're talking about something specialized like a cannabis growing facility, might be a little hard to nail down. But what I learned is that you can't barter on saying, well, we'll classify you as residential. Like, no, there has to be a clear delineation of what that property is designated. So for that reason, I think we're in the right place. I just feel bad that we got this far into it without board approval. I do believe we fixed that.
So can I add, can I take this to a totally different direction? I have no problem with the fact that Hallahan was representing us and did this work. The only thing is, I was kind of shocked by the number when I saw the number at 4894, and I want to know what we did from an internal approval process to make sure this doesn't happen again, because if that number came across my desk, I would be kind of shocked.
Well, so it's important to understand that going back, so to give you a little bit of history, the board approved Hallahan to represent us in July of '23. We have an invoice dated 9/5 for $2,515. We have an invoice 9/18, $3,646. We have an invoice 12/6 for $1,150.
So how many invoices total, Ken, just out of curiosity? Because I know we get the payables every month in our packet, and I just don't know how it slipped. No, nobody came to notice it, or who approved these invoices
Right.
being paid without.
Yep, so one of the things that we did internally to streamline the approval process through BS&A now, what happens is when an invoice, all the invoices go to accounting, and depending on what that amount is, or say, for example, I get an invoice for something, sometimes when I send that invoice in, I'll attach to it the minutes from the meeting where that was approved, so that they know, okay, this has already been approved by the Board of Trustees. Then what happens is they put it in the system, and I get an email saying, Ken, basically an automated email, invoice number 12345 needs to be approved. I log into BS&A and I approve that invoice, right? What happened here was, from a board level, we have a policy saying there's a finite amount of money you can spend. Anything beyond that amount requires board approval.
Right.
Because our assessor doesn't normally approve invoices, she didn't understand. She understood that we approved 195. She was looking at it saying, yes, I did talk to, this attorney on this date. And so she was looking at it from is this invoice accurate and associated with the work that was approved? What I clarified was that, okay, but we have other policies saying, what can be paid. So she, in good faith, approved these, saying, yes, this work was performed and these are accurate invoices, not understanding that, hey, there isn't board approval. And so I had said, okay, anything that goes through assessing, I need to change that flow so that if an invoice is being sent to assessing for their approval, I need the assessor to say, yes, this work was performed, but I need to also be involved in the approval process, because I could say, hey, wait a minute, we only approved $5,000 for this. As a board member, I can say, how did we get to 48,000?
Okay, so that's a change that was made internally then?
Correct, right.
Okay. So you're basically the person that oversees those invoices from now on and approves those invoices to get paid?
Correct. And I would say this is one of those unique situations. We save probably over $150,000 a year currently with our current arrangement, and assessing, we got a perfect score the last time we were evaluated. So I'm comfortable that that's working, but this was just a function of the assessor not understanding that once we were done with $5,000, we can't go any further.
Right.
We had that initial budget. Again, I found out about this probably a little more than a month ago, and I reached out to Hallahan and said, I've got to figure out what's going on. I've got to get Mr. Huth involved to make sure that everything that's done is, for lack of a better word, good. We got that approved, and that's why I'm bringing it to you at this point. I did explain, we've got a relationship that goes back, more than a decade, and so the attorney understands and has that
And
relationship.
I have no problem with the work that was done. It's just, I just want to make sure
How it
that the
happened.
balances are being taken care of here and
Correct.
now.
Yep.
That's the only concern that I have.
And before I was going to bring it forward, I kind of wanted to figure out what that was too. So, we try to put procedures in place, we go through audits, we go through these things. And again, nothing fraudulent occurred, but it didn't match our policy of saying, hey, listen, once we get to a certain point, we've got to have, which is why I included this $10,000 budget. So that's where we stand. So I'm looking, are any other questions or comments? Looking for a motion to ratify the payment of the existing payments of $48,894.82 to Hallahan and Associates for representation in multiple tax appeals. Approve the payment of $5,167.50 to Hallahan and Associates for their current invoice, and authorize a budget of up to $10,000 in additional expenses for continuing representation in these appeals. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the payment for the 48,894, the 5,167.50, and authorize an additional $10,000 for the continued representation in the appeals.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Brado.
Well, and realistically, I mean, we have already approved the 48,894.
We did, right.
As a board, right? So it's not really, we're approving it a second time, just being 100% eyes open, because this all went through our check runs, our board packets, everyone got this, everyone saw this. This wasn't checks that didn't go through the normal process on that side. It just exceeded the amount that the board had originally authorized. So these weren't things that didn't get approved by somebody or didn't come from my office to Larry's office to this board for approval, so.
We had eyes on everything. It's
Yes.
just-
Yeah, it's just that initial approval didn't trigger the, hey, wait a minute, this is beyond what our policy says, so, all right.
What does the agreement between us and them look like?
When you say them, AAS or Hallahan?
Hallahan.
Well, I think it's more an agreement to represent us, it's not a, like.
But did our agreement at 195 have a cap on it?
No.
It was just, we're gonna pay you $195 an hour?
Because, yeah, so the issue is, this is one of those scenarios where, like, say, for example, if we were a private entity, they might say, well, we need a retainer, right? Attorneys will often say, you give us money up front, we'll chip away and we'll let you know when we run out, right? We have a relationship that stretches at least probably more than a decade with this firm, and it's a good working relationship. We wouldn't necessarily utilize Hallahan if we were dealing with a residential tax appeal, but for example, probably 10 years ago, we went through a pretty extensive appeal with McRae. And that not only did we utilize Hallahan for that appeal, we also employed a marina appraiser, a specialist who came in from out of town, right? Like, when you get into something like this is abnormal, right? So we're going to establish that relationship. But Hallahan's just going to say, okay, we're going to represent you, and monthly we're going to tell you what it is. Your internal controls on deciding if you want to stop us or tell us to keep going is kind of on the township. So I feel like the assessor, in good faith, said, yes, this work was done. Yes, this makes economic sense. So she made the decision to continue with this. But I wasn't up to speed on where these cases were. I didn't see these invoices. I haven't been involved in any of the representation. So I was unaware. So by changing our process now, I get an invoice, I can say, hey, Debbie, what's going on? Where are we at in this process? How come so because the invoices are monthly, presumably I'm going to know once a month where we're at. Any other questions? All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Brado. Seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Item G3, Scott Cortese has served on the Downtown Development Authority Board since 2017. He has recently asked to step down from his position. He has recommended his neighbor for appointment to the DDA Board to fill the remainder of his term. The application from Miss Cynthia Griggs is attached. She is a resident of the DDA district I recommend that we accept the resignation of Mr. Scott Cortez and appoint Ms. Cynthia Griggs to the DDA Board for the remainder of the term to expire March 18, 2028.
I'll make that motion.
All right. Is there support?
Support.
We got a motion by Mr. Badkins with support by Mrs. Brown. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next, cost share agreement approval. Board members, Macomb County receives federal funds for road reconstruction through the Transportation Improvement Program, also known as TIP. These federal funds cover 80% of construction costs, but engineering and administration are not included. Macomb County Department of Roads splits the match and remaining costs with the municipality where the project is located. Jefferson, from South River Road to Metro Parkway, is one of the projects that has been funded for 2026. Attached is the proposed cost share agreement from Department of Roads with our share estimated at $391,121. We will need to identify funds or issue bonds for these costs. Excuse me. Failure to execute this agreement will prevent Jefferson from being reconstructed, and those funds will be allocated to another project outside of Harrison Township. I recommend that we approve the cost share agreement with the Macomb County Department of Roads to reconstruct Jefferson from South River Road to Metro Parkway and authorize the initial payment of $84,750.
Make that motion to approve the cost share agreement as presented.
All right.
Support.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Olgiati. We do have a workshop, board members, coming up about a week and a half.
30th?
Yep. So I intend to have a discussion about some of this funding at that time, but in the meantime, I think this is the right thing to do. So,
And I agree this is the right thing to do, but again, I think we should look at bonding for this as well. That's almost $500,000, and I would not want to bear the cost of that on the general fund.
correct. Agreed. All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Item G5, the Senior Center is in need of another shuttle bus driver. Kelly Hill was interviewed, and I recommend that we hire her as a shuttle bus driver at the rate of, I think it was listed as $17.06. I think that changed to, that went up 3% January 1. So I think this might have been, so I don't think $17.06 is the current. I think it was adjusted as of January 1. It's like 57, 1757, something like
We're
that.
going to say at the appropriate rate.
Yeah. The senior center or shuttle bus drivers, there's really two rates. If they possess a CDL, we found that some of the people that we are competing for drivers against have a CDL and non-CDL or designation. So this is the non-CDL designation. So looking for a motion to approve hiring the new bus driver.
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Badkins with support by Mr. Brado. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries. Next, item G6, part-time trades inspectors. Board members, we currently employ 3 part-time trades inspectors. There are times when these inspectors are not available and we have a need for substitutes. I'm requesting for permission to advertise and interview additional part-time trades inspectors. These individuals could be used to backfill when our regular inspectors are not available. Our building department has set times when they schedule trades inspections, so this will not result in any additional hours being scheduled, and we can notify the board members of any individuals we hire. So if we say, all right, we have a, Tuesday and Thursday, we have a plumbing inspector. If it's Mr. Smith, that's good. If Mr. Smith is unavailable, we would like to have some backups in the case. And it's important to understand that typically the part-time trades inspectors are retirees. And so, you say, well, I think I'll work for a little while. they're certainly well qualified, we're getting quality inspectors, but they're in sometimes a phase of their life when they say, I think I'm done this year. And so it's good to kind of have some relationships and some backups in the event that we have a more permanent need, so.
And this is sort of a blanket delegation to the full-timers to say, whenever we have a need, we can hire somebody that's qualified, right? It's not, we won't ask again for this because we have different people. This is just, if we replaced a full-time, yes, but otherwise, we can hire backup people that are qualified as needed.
Yeah, this is really, if you have the this is an area that's becoming harder and harder to select people. So, having established hours, dates, these part-time inspectors kind of like that, like, okay, I can schedule, hey, I'm going to work Monday and Wednesday at Harrison Township, maybe Tuesday and Thursday somewhere else, and I'll take a Friday off, or whatever that is. So kind of getting that relationship, and if someone says, hey, I'm not interested anymore, we want to make sure we've got folks backed up. We've tried to structure the way we employ these people in a way that's attractive to those part-timers so that we can fill that need.
How many are you looking for? How many people are you looking for?
It just really, plumbing, mechanical, and electrical. Right now, we have 3 good inspectors, but.
And we have some people that we already use as backups.
Okay.
But if I call the guy that I use every time and he's not available, it's nice to have a second person back there.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and from time to time, neighboring municipalities, maybe an inspector somewhere else will say, well, I can make myself available. So there is a relationship there. It's just kind of, really, we want to be ahead of that process to say, hey, is anybody else out there interested or available, and establish those relationships. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there support?
I'll support.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mrs. Brown. We had some discussion. Any further discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next, item G7. Review the development reviews fee schedule. Wade Trim provides our planning services. They took over the existing contract that we had with our prior planner in 2017 with no change in their fee structure. That contract dated back to 2014, so we have not adjusted our fee schedule for over 10 years. Included in the board packet is a red-lined copy of the current agreement and fee schedule. I recommend that we adopt the fee schedule as presented in the attached document. It's important to note these fees are passed through to the applicant, so these adjusted fees will not generate any additional revenue nor cost the township anything additional. So we pay $1,100 a month for a flat fee for the planner's services to attend various meetings, accept calls, kind of just do the day-to-day business. When someone comes in and has a plan, oh boy, it's not attached. What the heck? Oh, it is. It is. I saw the next agenda item like the old ones, and I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, so that, this shows when we had approved it previously. I forgot that was in there. So changes in what those fees are as they're passed on. Mr. Young is our planner. He does an excellent job. He did send, and I didn't include this in there, but he did send parallel documents for other municipalities that he services, and the fees are not the same. There's not exact, because everybody structures their fees a little different, but to the extent that you could compare them, these are pretty comparable to the most recent fees that were approved in neighboring municipalities. And so as far as I'm concerned, I feel like they've been providing those planning services under the going cost for some time.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
All right, is there support?
Support.
All right, motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Brado to approve this new fee schedule. Discussion.
When does this expire?
It
This
just.
is on convenience, I think.
Yeah, it's just been in place since that time. It hasn't been changed since that period.
It is, this contract has no end date on it? It's just open-ended? We can.
We've continued, this is one of those things where they've continued to provide the services, and we haven't changed what we've asked for, so.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it got adjusted every 5 years or every 10 years or exactly, because it looks like since 2014, these fees have been the same. So-
Right, right.
Okay.
Sometimes it's however long we can tell them,
Yeah,
we'll get to it in a little bit.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah,
And
this
that-
one's a little different because these aren't really fees that we absorb. These are the applicants.
Right.
So, we might say, well, here's our fee for hearing a case plus the plan review fee is X.
Yeah, they do a great job.
Yeah.
I have no issue with that.
Yep, so I'm comfortable with that, so. Any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. We do have a closed session as I-1 to discuss the attorney's written opinion on some outstanding litigation. But as we typically do, we will take public comments as item H before we go into closed session. So we'll open the floor now for public comments. They can be about any subject that you wish. We ask that you try to limit those public comments to 5 minutes in length.
C. William Bardell, 28-year resident, clean cut, do-gooder boy next door. Clean up, fix up, people helping people. Just want to remind everybody, check out Save Lake St. Clair on Facebook. Press follow and like and stay up to date on everything that's going on. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your evening. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment. Is there any board comments? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to enter into closed session at 7:47 to discuss the attorney's written opinion on outstanding litigation.
So moved.
All right, is there support?
Support.
We got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mr. Tominello to enter into closed session. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Mr. Olgiati?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Backens?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Verkast?
Yes. All right, we'll take a short recess and go into closed session.
Patrick, we have to ask you to leave, but I'll call you when we come back.
How long do you think, Rob?
Really, they're just all the same building case, so I would say 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay. You want to just
Can
chill
you give
for
us 15 minutes?
Do they want to close the plastic back there, smoke here?
I feel like I did, but I can't remember. We're not used to turning them on and off. Oh, we weren't sure.
It was loud in here and it's just,
Yeah,
it was still, yeah.
All right. Be looking for a motion to enter back into open session at 8:09.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Badkins with support by Mr. Tominello. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Mr. Backens?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Olgiati?
Yes.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Verkest?
Yes. All right, with no other business, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries, meeting adjourned.